The workshop on the edge of New Jungju was always full of sound. It wasn't loud, but a familiar chorus to its owner. The low hum of the climate control fighting the dusty heat, the precise whir of a laser cutter, and the soft, rhythmic tap of a stylus on a data slate. The man at the center of it all, Ji-hun, moved through the noise with a quiet focus. His hands, stained with fine lines of machine oil and polymer resin, worked with an unhurried certainty. He was fitting a new myoelectric sensor into a forearm prosthetic. His brow furrowed in concentration. Ji-hun was a biomechanical engineer. His workshop, a prefabricated dome expanded with scavenged shipping containers, was a place of organized chaos. Shelves groaned under spools of carbon fiber filament, bins of connectors, and half-finished projects. To a stranger, it might look like a junkyard. To the people of the colony, it was a place of small miracles. Ji-hun didn't build flashy military augments or corporate performance enhancers. He built arms, legs, and hands for miners who'd had accidents, for children born with differences, for anyone the distant. Expensive core world clinics had forgotten. He finished the calibration and held the arm up to the light from the single, large window. The prosthetic was elegant in its simplicity, a blend of polished durasteel and matte black composites. It was strong, responsive, and most importantly, affordable. He set it down gently in a lined case. The work was personal. A faded picture on his cluttered desk showed a younger Ji-hun with his father, both of them smiling, his father's human arm around his shoulders. The memory of the mining accident that took that arm, and the crude, painful prosthetic that followed, was the silent engine behind everything Ji-hun did. The colony's afternoon sun was a persistent orange glow. Dust motes danced in the slanted light coming through the window. Ji-hun was wiping down his tools when the door chime sounded, a soft, two-toned note. It wasn't the scheduled alert for his next client. He looked up. Two figures stood silhouetted in the doorway. The colony was a mix of species, but these two were unlike any he'd seen up close. They were Velen. Everyone knew of them. Their small, beautiful settlement was a day's travel into the crystalline highlands, and they kept to themselves. Trade was minimal, communication polite but distant. They were known for their quiet dignity and their biological complexity, which made them notoriously difficult to treat with standard human medicine. The taller one was clearly an adult, draped in a cloak of shifting gray fabric that seemed to drink the light. Their face was hidden in a deep hood. Beside them, holding on to a fold of the cloak, was a child. The child was also hooded, but smaller, more slight. "Come in," Ji-hun said, setting his cloth aside. He kept his voice calm, neutral. The adult glided in, the child matching their steps. The door slid shut, sealing out the dusty wind and the distant sounds of the colony. The workshop felt suddenly very quiet, the normal hum of machinery seeming too loud. The adult slowly reached up and lowered their hood. Ji-hun had to stop himself from staring. The Velen face was long and elegant, with large luminous eyes the color of dark amber. Their skin wasn't skin exactly. It had a subtle, pearlescent sheen, like the inside of a shell. There were no visible ears or nose, just smooth contours and a small, serene mouth. The adult placed a small, flat disc on the workbench. It glowed to life, and a neutral, synthesized voice filled the air. "You are the craftsman? The one who mends bodies?" The disc translated. "I build replacements," Ji-hun corrected gently. "I'm Ji-hun. How can I help?" The adult's large eyes blinked slowly. They placed a long-fingered hand on the child's shoulder and gave a slight nod. The child hesitated, then looked up at the adult. A silent communication seemed to pass between them. Slowly, the child raised their small hands and pushed back their own hood. This Velen child had the same luminous eyes, But where the adult's gaze was weary and cautious, the child's held a burning, intelligent curiosity. The child looked around the workshop, taking in the machines, the tools, the half-formed limbs on the benches. Their eyes were wide, absorbing everything. Then the adult spoke a soft, flowing word. The child's expression sobered. With a movement that was clearly practiced, the child shifted, using their right hand to pull aside the left side of their simple tunic. Ji-hun's breath caught. The child's left arm, from just below the shoulder, was withered. It wasn't a clean amputation. The limb was small, frail, and hung uselessly, the end tapering to a gentle, closed point. The skin there was dull, lacking the healthy sheen of the child's right side. It was a congenital condition, a limb that had never fully formed. The synthesized voice spoke again. The adult's tone, through the translator, was flat, but the pain was clear underneath. This is Kale. The limb is incomplete. It causes discomfort. It does not grow. Our own healers. Our biology rejects the synthetic grafts. The bonding fails. The pain is worse. The adult placed a hand over their own chest. It is a mark, a shadow. He cannot run with the others. He cannot grasp the crystal flowers of the high meadows. We have asked others. They say it is impossible. We were told you do not see impossibility. You see only a problem to solve. Ji-hun didn't answer immediately. He came around the workbench, moving slowly so as not to startle them. He knelt down, bringing himself to Kale's eye level. He didn't look at the limb first. He looked at Kale's face. The child watched him, not with hope, but with that intense, analytical curiosity. He was studying Ji-hun as much as Ji-hun was studying him. May I? Ji-hun asked softly, gesturing towards the small arm. The adult nodded. Ji-hun didn't touch it. He pulled a small, handheld scanner from his belt. It emitted a soft blue light. This won't hurt Kale. It just lets me see. He passed the scanner over the limb, then over Kale's healthy right arm. Data streamed across its tiny screen. Muscle density comparisons, neural energy signatures, bioelectrical field readings. The differences were stark. The Velen physiology was extraordinary. Their systems operated on a harmonious, low-frequency biofield that standard synthetic materials actively interfered with. It was like trying to graft plastic onto a living nerve. The body would violently expel it. The adult spoke again, a hint of defeat in the translated tone. You see, it is as they said. Ji-hun looked from the scanner's data to Kale's expectant face, and then to the withered limb. He thought of the crude, painful prosthetic his father had endured. He thought of the word impossible. In his workshop, that word was just a challenge. He hadn't broken down into pieces yet. They were wrong. Ji-hun said, standing up. His voice was quiet but firm. It is not impossible. It is just very difficult. The adult's large eyes widened slightly. Kale's head tilted. I cannot use standard materials. They will fail, Ji-hun continued, thinking out loud as he paced back to his main workbench. He began tapping on a larger screen, pulling up molecular design programs. I need to build something that speaks his body's language. Something that mimics the biofield, not fights it. He looked at Kale. It will take time. And I will need your help, Kale. I need to understand how you move, how you think about moving. The adult seemed to sway, as if a great weight had shifted. You will try? For a child not of your kind? Ji-hun finally looked away from his screens and met the adult's gaze. He saw the fear, the years of disappointment, the protective love. He didn't see an alien. He saw a parent. He is a child who needs an arm, Ji-hun said simply. That is the only kind that matters in here. He gestured around his workshop. Come back tomorrow, early. We start then. The adult bowed their head deeply, a gesture of profound respect. They placed a small pouch on the bench. It clinked softly. "For your time," the translator said. Ji-hun was about to refuse, but stopped. He understood it wasn't payment. It was a matter of honor, of setting a contract. He nodded his acceptance. Kale carefully used his good hand to pull his hood back up. But before he did, he looked at Ji-hun one more time. The deep curiosity was still there, but now, at the very edges of his serene mouth, was the faintest, most tentative hint of a smile. It wasn't joy yet, not quite. It was the first spark of possibility. They left as silently as they had come, the door sliding shut behind them. The workshop felt different. The hum of the machines was the same. The dust motes still danced in the sun, but the air was charged with a new purpose. Ji-hun looked at the data on his screen, at the complex, beautiful puzzle of Velen biology. He picked up a stylus, his mind already racing through solutions, discarding ideas, building new ones. He wasn't just fixing a machine. He was learning a new language to write a poem for a child. The problem was no longer an alien one. It was simply his. The morning light in Ji-hun's workshop was pale and clear. He had been there for hours, the empty cup of cold tea beside his main terminal, a testament to his focus. On the screen, three-dimensional models of Kale's biological data rotated slowly. It was less like engineering and more like studying a unique piece of art. His assistant, Su-min, arrived with 2 fresh cups of tea. She was a sharp-eyed young woman with a skeptical mind, which Ji-hun valued. She set a cup down next to him and peered at the screens. "Valen biosignatures," she said, not as a question. "You're really doing it? The alien kid?" "His name is Kale," Ji-hun said, not looking away. "And yes," Su-min sighed, leaning against the workbench. "Ji-hun, you read the same briefs I did. Their cellular structure is symbiotic with crystalline minerals. Their nervous system uses a bioelectrical field for communication as much as motor control. It's a nightmare. The Coalition Medical Corps wrote off full-limb prosthetics for them a decade ago. The rejection rate is 100%. "I know what the reports say," Ji-hun replied calmly. He zoomed in on a rendering of the neural pathways in Kale's healthy arm. They glowed with a faint, golden light in the simulation, intricate as lace. They tried to force our solutions onto their problems. They used polysteel, myosynths, standard neural links. It's like nailing a plank to a living tree. The tree will grow around it, try to push it out, and get infected. So what will you use? Wishful thinking? Su-min's tone was not unkind, but practical. "I'm going to grow a new branch," Ji-hun said. He finally looked at her. "I need you to go to the biolab. Get me the organic polymer gel, the one we use for nerve sheath repairs, and all the conductive aerogel filament we have. Then contact Tae-woo at the mining outpost. Ask him for a sample of the pure silicate crystal they harvested last week, the clear one that vibrates at a low frequency." Su-min's eyebrows rose, but she nodded, recognizing the shift in him from craftsman to inventor. She moved to follow his instructions. The door chimed. Kale and his guardian stood there, just as before. Today, the adult seemed less like a shadow. They guided Kale in and gave a slight bow. Ji-hun bowed back. "Today is for learning," Ji-hun said to Kale through the translation disc. "No tools yet, just playing." He had cleared a low table. On it were simple objects: a smooth river stone, a soft ball, a lightweight cup, a small, crystalline rock that sparkled. He gestured for Kale to sit. "I need to see how you think about touching," Ji-hun explained. He pointed to the river stone. "With your right hand, pick that up. Think about how you do it." Kale, his large amber eyes serious, reached out with his healthy right hand. His fingers moved with a natural, graceful precision, curling around the stone. He held it up. "Good," Ji-hun said. "Now, put it down. Close your eyes." Kale did so. "Now, don't move your left side. Just think. Imagine your left arm is just like your right. Imagine reaching out with it and picking up that stone. Imagine the feeling of its weight, its coolness." Kale's brow furrowed in concentration. For a long minute, nothing happened. Then the small, withered limb on his left side trembled. Not a spasm, but a faint, deliberate quiver. At the same time, the scanner Ji-hun had trained on Kale's neural field spiked. A specific, beautiful pattern flared to life in the air above the scanner, a signature of intent. "Perfect," Ji-hun whispered, his eyes locked on the data. "That's your signal. That's the thought." They spent hours on this. Kale, to his credit, never grew frustrated. He seemed fascinated by the process of having his own thoughts measured. Ji-hun mapped the neural signatures for grasp, release, lift, touch gently. Each one was a unique, shimmering pattern in the bio-dash field dot in the afternoon. Su-min returned with the materials. Ji-hun showed Kale the clear, pulsing crystal from Tae-woo. "This is special. It hums very softly, like your body does." He held it near Kale's good arm, and the scanner showed the crystal's vibration syncing, ever so slightly, with the boy's biofield. Kale's eyes went wide with understanding. The construction did not look like building a machine. It looked like a strange form of gardening or weaving. Ji-hun started with the organic polymer gel, a biocompatible base that was more like a thick sap. He used a precision dispenser to lay down the shape of bones, but they were not rigid. They were flexible, strong frames. Next came the muscle. He used the conductive aerogel, a material as light as air, but capable of carrying a current. He wove it, strand by microscopic strand, around the gel bones, creating a latticework that could contract and expand when charged. He modeled it directly from the scans of Kale's healthy arm, mirroring the unique vellin fibrous structure. The most delicate part was the nerve network. Here, he used the pulsing silicate crystal. He ground it into a fine, luminous powder and infused it into a network of liquid polymer channels he printed throughout the limb. This, he hoped, would create a conductive system that didn't just carry a signal, but resonated with Kale's own natural biofield. Speaking the same language, Datsu-min watched, her earlier skepticism giving way to wonder. "You're not building a tool," she murmured. "You're building an instrument." "It has to be part of him," Ji-hun said, his hands steady as he aligned the main neural conduit. "Not an attachment." As evening approached, the limb lay on a sterile field. It was uncanny. It had the general shape of Kale's small, healthy arm, with a graceful taper to 4 long fingers. It had no skin yet. Its interior was a mesmerizing landscape of woven light pink gel muscles and the faint, golden glow of the crystal-infused neural channels. It was beautiful and strange. Kale had watched the entire process, utterly still, his eyes missing nothing. The guardian had remained a silent, observant statue in the corner. "Now," Ji-hun said, wiping his brow. "The connection." This was the moment of truth. All previous attempts by others failed here, where foreign material met vellin tissue. Ji-hun had prepared a custom interface cuff. It was lined with a living cellulose mesh soaked in nutrients and Kale's own cultured cells, taken from a harmless swab earlier. The inside of the cuff pulsed with the same crystal powder. "This might feel warm. Or tingly. Tell me if it hurts," Ji-hun said, his voice low. He looked at Kale, who gave a small, brave nod. Ji-hun carefully fitted the cuff over the end of Kale's withered limb. It sealed with a soft hiss. He activated the sequence. A soft, warm, golden light glowed from the seam where the living tissue met the crafted limb. The scanner beside them went wild, not with warning symbols, but with harmonious frequency patterns. The two biofields, Kale's and the limbs, were not fighting. They were vibrating, seeking, and then sinking, like two identical tuning forks finding the same note. A low, melodic sound filled the workshop, a hum of perfect resonance. The Guardian took a sharp, silent breath. Su-Min covered her mouth with her hand. Kale looked down at his left side. The new limb lay still on the table, attached but inactive. He looked at Ji-hun, his expression asking the question. "Think the thought," Ji-hun whispered. "Think touch. Think of the stone." Kale closed his eyes. The neural scanner flared with the now familiar touch signature. In the limb, the golden neural channels brightened. The 4 fingers of the prosthetic twitched. Then, with a motion that was slow, gentle, and utterly precise, the hand lifted. It moved through the air, not with the jerky motion of a machine, but with the fluid grace of something alive. It hovered over the smooth river stone. The fingers curled. They closed around the stone with a delicate, firm pressure dot in the absolute silence of the workshop. Kale opened his eyes. He looked at the stone held in his new left hand. He looked at Ji-hun. And then the tentative, partial smile from the previous day bloomed into a full, radiant expression of pure, uncomplicated wonder. It was the first time Ji-hun had seen a Villain smile, and it was like watching a star ignite. He had not just built a limb. He had tuned an instrument to a solitary song, and now, for the first time, it could play. For a long moment, the only sound in the workshop was the soft, resonant hum from the connection where Kale's flesh met the new limb. Everyone was frozen, watching the impossible. The small, pale hand, woven from gel and light, held the river stone as naturally as if it had always been there. Kale broke the silence. He let out a soft, breathy sound, not a word, but a tone of pure astonishment. He turned his new hand slowly, watching the joints flex. The movement was not perfectly smooth, but it was under his control. He looked from the stone to Ji-hun, his large amber eyes wide with a question he didn't know how to ask. "It's yours," Ji-hun said gently, a smile breaking across his own tired face. "You're moving it. Now, think release." Kale's brow furrowed again in that familiar look of concentration. The fingers obediently opened, and the stone clattered softly back onto the table. The sound seemed to break the spell for the others. Kale's guardian, who had been a statue of tense hope, let out a shuddering breath. A shimmering tear escaped, tracing a slow, silvery path down their pearlescent cheek. They did not make a sound, but the profound relief in their posture was a language of its own. Su-Min finally lowered her hand from her mouth. It accepted the interface. No rejection markers. The biofields are in harmony. She looked at Ji-hun with new respect. "You didn't just build an arm. You built a bridge." "The bridge is only half done," Ji-hun said, his mind already racing to the next steps. He addressed the Guardian through the translation disk. "The hard connection is stable. That's the most important part. Now we need to teach it, and him, how to work together properly. And we need to give it a skin." The next few hours were a blur of focused activity. Ji-hun became a teacher, and Kale his eager student. They moved past simple grasp and release. Ji-hun laid out a series of small tasks. He placed the soft ball on the table. Think of holding it without squeezing too hard. Kale's first attempt was clumsy. The fingers closed into a fist, mashing the ball. The boy looked startled, then disappointed. "It's okay," Ji-hun reassured him. "Your brain is used to sending signals to muscles that don't answer. Now they do. You have to learn the new strength. Try again, but think gentle." Kale tried. The second attempt was better. The fingers closed more softly. By the fifth try, he could pick the ball up and hold it aloft without deforming it. The joy on his face was palpable. They moved on to the cup. They practiced lifting it, setting it down without a crash. They practiced touching the sparkling crystalline rock with just a fingertip. Ji-hun adjusted the sensitivity of the neural feedback loops with each exercise, fine-tuning the connection. It was like tuning a complex, living instrument. While they practiced, Su-min worked on the final layer. Using a bioprinter, she created a sheath of silicone-like material, but infused with the same mineral powder that gave the vellin their sheen. She matched the color perfectly to Kale's healthy skin, a soft, opalescent gray. It was flexible, durable, and most importantly, it would conduct the subtle bioelectrical field across its entire surface, allowing for full sensory feedback as the sun began to dip. Casting long shadows across the workshop floor, Ji-hun called for a pause. "Last step," he announced. Su-min brought over the skin sheath. Together, she and Ji-hun carefully fitted it over the exposed mechanics of the limb. It sealed at the wrist with a seamless, invisible join. The transformation was remarkable. The strange, beautiful interior was now covered. The arm looked whole. It looked real. It looked like Kale's. The boy stared at it, utterly mesmerized. He touched the new skin of the left hand with the fingers of his right. A shiver went through him. "It feels warm," the translation disc whispered for him, the first words he had spoken all day. "Good," Ji-hun said. "That's the sensory feed working. Now, the big test. Stand up, Kale." With his guardian's help, Kale slid off the stool. He stood, slightly uneven, his body conditioned to compensate for the useless weight on his left side. He looked unsteady. "You've been leaning to your right for a long time," Ji-hun said. "Your new arm has weight, but it's also strong. It can help you balance. Don't think about walking yet. Just think about standing straight. Feel the arm at your side. Let it be a part of your body." Kale closed his eyes. He took a deep, slow breath. He shifted his weight, centering himself. The new arm hung naturally. For the first time in his life, his body felt symmetrical. He opened his eyes, looking straight ahead at Ji-hun. "Now," Ji-hun said, taking a step back. "One step toward me. Slow and easy." The guardian tensed, a hand half raised as if to catch him. Su-min held her breath. Kale looked down at his feet, then at Ji-hun. He lifted his right foot, placed it forward. As he did, he instinctively began to lean right, his left shoulder dipping. He caught himself. He stopped. He thought. The new left arm moved slightly at his side, the muscles within contracting just a little. It was a tiny adjustment, a counterbalance. He brought his left foot forward to meet the right. The step was small, hesitant, but it was balanced. He did not stumble. A sound like a soft chime escaped the guardian. Again, Ji-hun encouraged, his voice soft. Another step. This one was more confident. The arm moved in a natural swinging rhythm with his opposite leg. Step, step. Kale walked across the open floor of the workshop, his gait slow but steady, his posture straight. He reached Ji-hun and looked up, his expression one of dazed triumph. Then, he did something he had probably never done without fear. He turned. He looked at the clear path back to his guardian. And he ran. It wasn't a fast run. It was a careful, joyful, bounding trot. 5 steps. 10. He threw himself into the waiting arms of the adult villain, who caught him and held him tight, their faces pressed together. The low, melodic hum of their shared biofield filled the corner of the room. A song of happiness. Ji-hun watched, a deep, quiet satisfaction settling in his bones. This was why he did this. Not for the challenge, though that was part of it. For this moment, for the running, the Guardian finally released Kale and turned to Jihan. They bowed lower than before, a deep, formal bow of immense gratitude. When they rose, they spoke, and the translation disc conveyed the solemn words. You have given more than a limb. You have given him the ground beneath his feet and the wind in his face. Our people will hear of this. Kale tugged on the Guardian's cloak. He had walked back to the work table. With his new hand, he carefully picked up the sparkling crystalline rock, the one that looked like the flowers of his highland home. He held it out to Jihan, and offering Ji-Hun took it. The crystal was cool and vibrant in his palm. Thank you, Kale. It was time for them to go. The sun was nearly down. The Guardian placed another, heavier pouch on the bench, but Ji-Hun shook his head. The first was enough. This was a privilege. The adult considered this, then bowed in acceptance. They guided Kale toward the door. The boy, however, paused on the threshold. He turned back. He looked at Ji-Hun, then at his own left hand. He raised it, fingers spread, and made a gentle waving motion. It was a universal gesture, learned in an instant. A goodbye. Ji-Hun raised his own hand and waved back. Goodbye, Kale. They slipped out into the twilight, the door closing on the quiet hum of the workshop. The space felt different. Empty, but charged with a lingering warmth. Su Min let out a long breath. I have never seen anything like that. Ji-Hun just nodded, looking at the crystal in his hand. He was exhausted, but it was a clean, good tiredness. He had solved the puzzle. The child could run. He began to tidy the tools, the normal routine calming his buzzing mind. He assumed that was the end of it. A beautiful, singular moment in his life at the edge of the colony. He did not know that the story of the limb, carried home in the silent, swift Velen way, was already traveling up through the crystalline canyons, moving faster than any human signal, heading straight for the heart of their settlement. He did not know that his quiet act of solving a problem was about to become an answer to a much larger question. For now, there was just the satisfaction of a job done right, and the memory of a child's first balanced step. The deep quiet of the colony night had settled over Ji-Hun's workshop. He was alone now, the only light coming from a single lamp over his main bench. The usual chorus of machines was silent, powered down. In the stillness, he cleaned his tools with a methodical care, the familiar ritual helping his mind unwind from the day's high-wire act of creation. The new limb for Kale had been his most complex work. He turned the sparkling crystal the boy had given him over in his fingers, watching it catch the lamplight. It was a good day's work. More than good. He felt a profound, simple contentment. He placed the crystal on a shelf next to his father's picture, a new treasure among old memories. Outside, the colony of New Jeongju was winding down. The distant, low thrum of the fusion reactor was a constant background hum. The occasional shout or sound of a ground car engine echoed from the main habitation blocks. It was a normal evening. Ji-Hun finished wiping down his precision drivers and reached to turn off the lamp. That's when the normal sound stopped. It wasn't a gradual quieting. It was as if someone had cut a wire. The reactor hum seemed to dampen, not disappear, but become distant, muffled. The far-off sounds of life vanished completely. An unnatural silence pressed against the walls of the workshop, thick and heavy. Ji-Hun straightened up, his senses alert. He moved to the window and looked out into the dusty street. At first, he saw nothing but the darkness between the pools of light from the street lamps. Then, he felt it before he saw it, a subtle vibration in the floor, a harmonic resonance that made the tools on his bench shiver with a faint metallic whisper. The air itself seemed to thicken, to press down. A shadow passed over the stars. It was massive and silent, blotting out the constellations as it descended. No roaring engines, no blast of thrusters. It was a ship, but unlike any colony freighter or patrol vessel. It was sleek, its lines long and graceful like a blade, and its surface was a perfect, non-reflective black that seemed to drink the light from the street lamps below. It made no sound as it settled onto the packed earth of the street just outside his workshop, a giant obsidian feather landing without a rustle. Ji-hun's heart hammered against his ribs. This was not a human ship. As he watched, a section of the ship's hull dissolved. It didn't open like a door. It simply flowed aside, revealing a soft, golden light from within. Figures emerged. They were Velen, taller than Kale's guardian, dressed in flowing garments of dark gray and silver that seemed to shift like liquid smoke. They moved with a unison that was eerie and beautiful, forming two lines leading from the ship to his workshop door. They were guards, their posture alert, but not aggressive, their large, luminous eyes scanning the surroundings with a calm intensity. Then she appeared. She emerged from the golden light of the ship. Even at a distance, her presence changed the quality of the night. She was taller than the guards, her bearing straight and regal. Her garments were simpler than he might have expected, a robe of deep, iridescent blue that moved like water. Her skin had the same pearlescent sheen, but it seemed to hold a light of its own. Her face was serene, ageless, and her eyes, as they found his window, held a depth and weight that felt like looking into a still, ancient pool. Ji-hun knew, with a certainty that chilled and awed him at once. This was not just a leader. This was the queen. One of the guards at the front of the procession turned and looked directly at his door. They did not move to approach. It was an invitation, a command. His mouth dry, Ji-hun stepped back from the window. He looked around his cluttered, humble workshop, suddenly seeing it through alien eyes, the oil stains on the floor, the half-dismantled prosthetic on a bench, the simple kettle in the corner. It was the home of a mechanic, not a diplomat. He had no choice but to answer. He smoothed his war-work tunic uselessly and walked to the door. It slid open with a soft hiss. The silent street was now a stage. The Velen guards stood perfectly still, their attention fixed on him. The queen stood between the lines, waiting. The air hummed with a low-frequency resonance from the ship, a sound felt in the teeth more than heard. Ji-hun stepped out. He stopped a few paces from his doorway, unsure of the protocol. He gave the deepest, most respectful bow he could manage, holding it. When he straightened, the queen was closer. She had moved without seeming to walk, gliding over the dust until she was only an arm's length away. She regarded him, her gaze sweeping over his face, his hands, then back to his eyes. It was an assessment, but not a cold one. It was deeply curious. She spoke. Her voice was unlike the translation disc's flat tone. It was melodic, layered with subtle harmonics, like wind over crystal. A guard at her side held a small, ornate device. It projected the translation into the air between them, the words forming in soft, blue light. "You are the craftsman, Ji-hun." It was a statement, not a question. He nodded, finding his voice. "I am. You gave my son a limb today." Her eyes never left his. "You gave him a future." The words landed with the weight of a mountain. "My son." The pieces crashed together in Ji-hun's mind. Kale's quiet dignity, the guardian's profound relief, the crystal from the high meadows. The child wasn't just important. He was the royal heir. Ji-hun felt the world tilt. He had seen a child in need. He had not seen a prince. I did not know, he managed to say. "That is why you did it," the queen, Elara, said. The translated words hovered, precise. "You saw the child, not the crown. You saw the problem, not the politics." She took another step, now standing at the threshold of his workshop. She looked past him, into the chaotic, creative heart of his space. Her gaze lingered on the workbench where Kale's limb had been built, on the bioprinter, on the shelves of materials. "May I enter your place of making?" It was a request, but from a queen, it felt like an immense honor. "Yes, of course." "Please," Ji-hun said, stepping aside. Queen Ilara glided into the workshop. Her guards moved to flank the doorway, but did not enter. She moved through the space slowly, her eyes taking in everything. She did not look disgusted by the mess or unimpressed by the simplicity. She looked fascinated. She stopped before the shelf with his father's picture and the new crystal. Her long, graceful fingers hovered near the crystal, but did not touch it. "He gave you a piece of his world," she observed. "He did." She turned to face him fully. The confined space made her presence even more immense. "Kale's condition is a rare genetic expression among our kind. It is seen by some, by many, as a sign of weakness, a flaw in the royal line." Her translated voice was calm, but he heard the old pain in it. "For many cycles, we have sought answers. Our own science, advanced in many ways, could not solve it. The materials were foreign. The spirit of the solution was wrong. It was an attempt to cover a flaw, not to complete a picture." She gestured around the workshop. "You approached it as a craftsman, a maker. You sought harmony, not dominance. You used the song of our own bodies as your blueprint." She looked at his hands again. "With these, you built a bridge where our greatest minds built only walls." Ji-hun didn't know what to say. He just listened. "My people have been isolationists," Alara continued. "We believed our ways were too different, that the galaxy was too loud, too harsh. We feared being altered, subsumed." Her luminous eyes held his. "But you have shown something else. You did not try to make him human. You helped him become more fully Velan. You saw difference not as something to fix, but as a key to a new lock." She stepped closer. The air seemed to warm around her. "I did not come here only to thank you, Ji-hun. I came with a proposal, an offer." Ji-hun's breath caught. He could feel the moment, vast and significant, hanging in the air between them. "We have knowledge of biology, of resonant materials, of fields your science is only beginning to sense. You have a mind that sees connections and hands that can build them." She spread her own hands, a gesture of joining. "I propose we build something new. Not in my city, not fully in your colony. A place between. A clinic, a workshop, where your skill and our knowledge can come together. To help others like Kale, among my people. And perhaps," she added, her gaze unwavering, "for your people as well. There are wounds of both body and spirit that might be healed by such harmony." The vision unfolded in Ji-hun's mind. It was staggering. It was the opposite of everything he knew about the silent, separate Velan. "You would do this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Because of one arm?" "No," Queen Alara said, and for the first time, he saw the faintest echo of Kale's smile touch her serene features. "Because of the philosophy that built it. You did not see an alien. You saw a person. In a galaxy that often forgets the difference, that is the most powerful technology of all. Will you build this bridge with me, craftsman?" Outside, the silent ship hummed. Inside, surrounded by his simple tools, Ji-hun stood before a queen and saw not a monarch, but a fellow builder, offering him the most complex, meaningful project of his life. He looked at his father's picture, then at his own hands. He nodded. The silence in the workshop after Queen Ilara's departure was different from before. It wasn't the quiet of a finished day. It was the resonant, humming silence that follows the first clear note of a bell, waiting for the next one to ring. Ji-hun stood in the center of the room, the words "I will" still hanging in the air. Though the Queen and her silent guards were gone, her ship vanished back into the starry dark. He felt untethered. The solid, familiar world of his workshop, the smell of ozone and lubricant, the tangible problems of broken prosthetics and sore joints, had just expanded into something vast and nebulous. A clinic, a partnership with an alien species, a bridge. He was a mechanic, not a diplomat. He looked at his oil-stained hands, wondering if they were really the right tools to build what she envisioned. The next morning, the colony was buzzing. News, it seemed, could travel even without official channels. Su Min arrived early, her eyes wide. Ji-hun, the coms are full of it. Scanners picked up an unregistered vessel of incredible design last night, parked right on your street. People are saying it was the Velen. The Velen Queen. It was, Ji-hun said simply, cleaning the same tool he'd cleaned the night before. Su Min stared at him. And she was grateful. For Kale, that's it. A royal visit just for a thank you? Ji-hun paused. He trusted Su Min. No, she proposed a joint project. A medical facility, combining their knowledge with ours. Su Min's skepticism warred with sheer awe on her face. It settled into a slow, dawning understanding. The resonance materials, the biofield harmonization, their understanding of organic crystal growth. She trailed off, her engineer's mind already leaping ahead. We could revolutionize neural interfacing. We could build prosthetics that feel like living tissue. Not just for them. For us, too. She looked at him, her expression turning serious. This is bigger than a workshop, Ji-hun. This is history. He knew she was right. That was the terrifying part. 3 days later, the first official contact came. Not a silent ship in the night, but a formal message on the Colonial Administration Channel, requesting a meeting between designated human representatives and the Velen Conclave. Ji-hun was named as a primary consultant. The colonial governor, a pragmatic woman named Park, summoned him to her office. She studied him from across a neat desk. You've kicked over an anthill, son. A very polite, very advanced anthill. They're requesting you specifically. Why? Ji-hun explained, as best he could, about Kale, about the limb, about the Queen's visit. Governor Park listened, steepling her fingers. They've ignored every diplomatic overture for a decade. And now they want to build a hospital with us because you fixed a kid's arm? She let out a short, amazed laugh. The universe is a strange place. All right, you're our point man. Don't mess it up. And for heaven's sake, get a new shirt. The following week, a human shuttle carried Ji-hun, Su Min, and Governor Park to a neutral point in the highlands, a grassy plateau dotted with the crystalline flowers Kale loved. A Velen craft was already there. From it emerged Queen Elara, accompanied by a few advisors, and, to Ji-hun's surprise, Kale. The boy stood proudly beside his mother, and when he saw Ji-hun, he didn't wave. He raised his left hand and made a deliberate, smooth, grasping motion in the air. A shared secret, a reminder of their first success. The meeting was not like human negotiations. There were no long arguments over terms or funding. The Velen concept was more organic. Queen Elara presented a crystalline data sliver. When activated, it projected a shimmering three-dimensional model of a structure. It was beautiful, flowing, with curves inspired by Velen architecture, but grounded in human practicality. It wasn't on the colony land or deep in their territory. It was in a valley between, a place of natural beauty and neutrality. The haven of joined song, Elara named it. A place where the melodies of different sciences can create a new harmony. We will provide materials, knowledge of biological resonance fields. You will provide engineering, your understanding of mechanical systems, and broader medical practice. Governor Park, ever practical, asked about structure, about oversight. The Velen concept was a shared stewardship, a council of makers and healers from both peoples. It was idealistic. It was also, Ji-hun realized, the only way it could work. You couldn't build a bridge owned by only one side. He found his voice during the talks, not as a diplomat, but as a craftsman. When discussion turned to the integration of systems, he spoke of interface protocols not as code, but as a common language for the machines. When they talked about patient care, he described the workshop not as a factory, but as a place where someone learns their own strength again. He saw the Velen advisors nod, their large eyes blinking in understanding. He was translating human ingenuity into terms of harmony, and it worked. The agreement was made, not with a signed contract, but with an exchange. Governor Park offered a seed crystal from the colony's first fusion reactor, a symbol of human energy and foundation. Queen Alara offered a living cutting from the great crystal tree that grew in their city's heart, a symbol of organic growth and life. They were placed together in a vessel of clear alloy, where they would remain. A core of the New Haven construction began not with bulldozers, but with a subtle manipulation of the land. Velen specialists used directed sonic frequencies to gently shape the bedrock. Human engineers followed, laying foundations and support frames. Ji-hun and Su-min moved their essential equipment to a temporary site at the edge of the valley. Their first project at the haven itself was not for a Velen or a human, but a collaborative test, a sonic resonator that could stimulate bone growth. Designed by Velen biologists and built by human hands, months flowed. The haven rose, a structure of swooping, crystalline panels and warm, composite metals, full of light and quiet spaces. Ji-hun's life was no longer just about fixing what was broken. It was about discovery. He learned to listen to a material's resonance before shaping it. Su-min, working with a Velen material smith, developed a new polymer that could change its flexibility based on a patient's biofield. One afternoon, a human miner was brought in, his leg crushed beyond saving. In the old workshop, Ji-hun would have built a standard prosthetic. Here, they did something different. They took a scan of the man's healthy leg, not just of its shape, but of its unique cellular vibration. Using the VLA knowledge, they cultured a graft interface that matched this vibration. The prosthetic leg Ji-hun built incorporated tiny resonant crystals along the neural pathways. When it was attached, the man didn't just get a new leg. He reported, with tears in his eyes, that he could feel the warmth of the floor through it. The leg wasn't a tool. It was a part of him. The news spread. The haven of joined song became a beacon. It proved that cooperation did not mean dilution. The Velen remained proudly, uniquely Velen. The humans remained inventive, pragmatic humans. But in the middle, they had created something new that belonged to both. Years later, Ji-hun stood on a balcony of the finished haven, looking over the green valley. The structure hung softly behind him, a literal song of integrated systems. Inside, Velen children with limb differences learned to run alongside human veterans learning to grasp again. Researchers from a dozen species requested to visit, to study. Queen Alara found him there. She no longer arrived with silent ships and guards. She simply walked the halls of the haven as its co-founder. "You are thinking of your father," she said, not as a question. She had learned to read his silences. "I am," Ji-hun said. "He lived with pain from a crude prosthetic. I wish he could have seen this. I wish he could have felt it." Alara placed a hand on the balcony rail, her fingers near his. "He does see it. Through your hands, craftsman. You took your pain and turned it into a key. You unlocked a door not just for my son, but for two peoples." She looked at him, the starlight reflecting in her ancient eyes. "You built a limb for a child, and from that single act, we built a future." Below them, in a garden of mixed earth and Velan flora, Ji-hun saw Kale. The boy was now a tall, confident youth. He was showing a younger human girl how to coax a bioluminescent crystal to glow brighter, using the gentle, precise touch of the hand Ji-hun had built for him so long ago. He was not a prince in that moment, nor a patient. He was a teacher. He was a bridge. Ji-hun nodded, the deep satisfaction settling into a permanent peace. The workshop on the edge of the colony was still there, still fixing simple things. But here, in this place of joined song, he had helped build something far greater than a limb. He had helped prove that in a vast and often lonely universe, the most powerful thing to build was a connection.